Hey everybody! In today's video, we are going to use neon watercolor to color this fun little botanical scene. Now, what's really interesting about this card is the only medium I'm using is liquid watercolor. Nothing else is used, not for stamping or anything. So this will be fun to go through. I've started with a piece of watercolor paper that I'm spraying with water. I cut this with my infinity dies, and I'm just mushing it into the Brights watercolor just to get kind of an all-over background. I wanted a little bit more pink, so I added a little bit of pink. You can never have too much of this hot pink watercolor. It's amazing. And then you will want to let that dry completely. Most of what I'm doing today is going to be wet on wet watercolor, but I will do the detailing at the end with dry watercolor, with wet watercolor on dry paper. So now I'm going to mix a dark brownish color to stamp with. And it's amazing that you can take all these neons and still make these neutrals. So don't worry if you just have a couple of colors. You can mix up all kinds of creative stuff. Like this looks like coffee. It's amazing. So I just kind of keep messing with it until it's dark enough that it's going to show up against that super bright background. Now, using the same colors to mix with means the overall composition is going to be very harmonious because I'm making my neutrals out of the colors that are already present on the piece that I've watercolored. Now I have this beautiful script stamp that I'm just using the watercolor like an ink pad and pressing that down onto the dry piece of paper. Make sure that that's dry. And look how clearly that stamps, that even that tiny, tiny script. It has all these little positive messages in it. So I'll let that dry naturally. Now on the little die cuts for the botanicals, I did get them wet before painting. That's why the color is blending so well. I've cut out some of the boring parts, like getting that wet before I add the color, but I'm also going to show you the mixing. So I put down the red, but I'm going to add a little bit of green and a little bit of purple to do the shading at the edges with, and you'll want this still to be wet while you're doing this. But don't be afraid to use these complementary colors, especially when you're doing natural objects like a mushroom or a plant, because real leaves and real botanicals have lots of different colors in them. So I'm just dropping the green and the purple in around the edges for a little bit of depth and shading. Now I'm making a green mushroom, same thing, adding the purple to add a little bit of shading. And again, the mushroom is wet before I start painting. Now I did add some black watercolor. I did want a good neutral gray. So I grabbed my black liquid watercolor for some of the stems, and I will use this as well for more detailed shading when the watercolor paper is dry. So underneath this little mushroom, I'm making that all kind of gray, and then while it's still wet, adding a little bit of shading, but like I said, I'll go back with the sharper shading. Now here I'm going to tone down the bright green with some other colors just to make that a more neutral. It'll be a real interesting green in contrast to the chartreusey bright green that I have on the other larger pieces. I'm dropping a little bit of some of that neutral that I created into the stem line. And then for the little fiddlehead looking botanicals, I'm adding black and then dropping both yellow and pink into these two just for little pops of color. I wanted some kind of neutral things in the background because the foreground is so very colorful. But I can still have fun adding some bright neon colors to that black. So now I'm mixing again, making up my neutrals to add sharper shading to what is now dry. And you'll see what a big difference this makes when you paint with wet watercolor onto dry paper. It's almost like you're using a pen or a marker to add those sharp details, and it really just livens up that painting at the end, so don't skip this step. The sharpness is what contrasts with the nice soft blendy watercolor, to make it really pop off the page. And even just that little line under the mushroom cap makes such a big difference in the way that this looks. So I will also go on one side of the little fiddlehead and add some darkness, and then I'm going to add shadows underneath the bottom of each leaf. I think that this makes this a much more dramatic piece than it was in the beginning if you just add that darkness underneath. And it also gives it like a little bit of dimension. So I'll just go underneath each one of those. Then I will accent the stem on this kind of ferny looking piece. That makes the leaves look like they're in front of this stem, which I really like. And it just brings that out a little bit more because that color is so soft and it's one of the more neutral things on this card. So it was kind of a unusually cloudy day. We have not had any rain or anything, so it's a little dim on my video, but it's a little bit brighter in real life. I'm also having some issues with my lighting. Lighting industry needs to get itself together. I'm just saying. So I will add a couple little accents to the smaller fiddlehead as well. And then I can never resist adding paint pen to this type of image. So I'm adding a little bit of white paint. These dies have the little spots kind of debossed on the mushroom, so you know exactly where they go. And what's really nice is they're asymmetrical and very natural looking. So I'm just adding paint wherever those little spots would be. I think this really livens it up and makes it look realistic. I will also come back with my finest black paint pen. I love this little thing. It's almost like a gel pen. It's so fine. And I like to add little black dots just everywhere all over my botanicals. If you just walk outside and look at a leaf, it's very hard to find a leaf that doesn't have spots on it, just little black spots. So you'll see how much that adds in the final piece. There's a little close-up of what those dots look like and just how fine this pen is. I think it's great. So I'll add these all over. I try to kind of do this quickly so that I don't overthink it. If you sit there and think I need a dot on every single leaf, it's not going to look that natural. So I try to do these kind of fast so that there's a little bit of randomness involved. But the black and the white make all the difference at the end, I think, and you'll see in the close-up of the card. So I'll do it again on the little fern. That is all there is to that. And if you check my YouTube short for today, I'm going to show you the quickest trick for after you've arranged everything the way you like it, which is what I'm doing here. How to quickly transfer that to your card. It's kind of a fun trick. But what I wanted is I sort of wanted this half circle piece to kind of look like the sun. That's what I'm going for. And I debated with myself about whether that needed to be at the bottom of the card or kind of in the center of the card. And I ended up with it in the center. I even thought about grounding it with a piece of dark cardstock on the bottom. But these bright colors looked so pretty against, I have a white linen card base, which I love. I love that linen texture in the background. And I thought that the contrast here was so nice. So once I had put this together and debated with myself on where everything should be, I found a really quick way to keep it exactly like I liked it when I was setting it up. And that's what you will see in my YouTube short. So here's the basic arrangement that is going to happen when I transfer this to my cards. So check out my shorts and you'll see how I ended up doing that. Head over to my blog for more information, and thanks so much for watching.